President Trump is said to be preparing to send troops and drones to Mexico in an effort to stop cartels from smuggling drugs into America. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has made an urgent appeal to Russia, China, and Iran to bolster his country's dilapidated military capabilities, all in anticipation of a U.S. military strike. In other news, President Trump is reportedly preparing to send troops and drones to Mexico, all in an effort to stop cartels from smuggling drugs into America. President Trump's administration is reportedly training armed forces for the mission after bombing ships in the Caribbean in the war against so-called narco-terrorists. Early planning stages are said to have already been conducted in Mexico. That's what two U.S. officials told NBC News. However, deployment isn't imminent, and U.S. leaders are still discussing the scope of the potential mission. That's what officials reportedly said. Soldiers carrying out the reported mission will be working under the Pentagon's Joint Special Operations Command. That's what former and current officials told NBC. The personnel would operate under Title 50, which is America's legal code for national security efforts. That's if the plan is approved. Military crews would mainly use drones to strike cartels, with some soldiers needed on the ground to operate them safely close by. The action, it would diverge from previous administrations, which have quietly supported Mexico's fight against cartels with CIA agents and other manpower, instead of actually taking direct action. The Trump administration, they plan to keep the details of the mission under wraps and not publicize actions, unlike recent strikes in the Caribbean. That's, again, what officials told the outlet. When asked for comment, a senior administration official told NBC News, quote, "The Trump administration is committed to utilizing an all-of-government approach to address the threats cartels pose to American citizens," end quote. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has made an urgent appeal to Russia, China, and Iran to bolster his country's dilapidated military capabilities and seek assistance, requesting defensive radars, aircraft repairs, and possibly missiles, all amid a potential conflict with the United States. This is reported by the Washington Post, according to UNN. The publication writes as follows, quote, "Amid a buildup of American military forces in Caribbean, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is appealing to Russia, China, and Iran to bolster his country's dilapidated military capabilities and seek assistance, requesting defense radars, aircraft repairs, and possibly missiles, according to internal U.S. government documents," end quote. The requests to Moscow, they were outlined in a letter addressed to Russian President Vladimir Putin, which was to be delivered during a visit to the Russian capital by a high-ranking aide this month. According to the documents, Maduro also wrote a letter to the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, requesting, quote, "expanded military cooperation," end quote, between the two countries to counter, quote, "escalating tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela," end quote. In the letter, Maduro asked the Chinese government to accelerate the production of radar detection systems by Chinese companies, likely so that Venezuela could strengthen its capabilities. It is not clear from the documents how Russia, China, and Iran responded. The publication noted, quote, "Russia remains a key pillar for Maduro. On Sunday, an aircraft, one of the Russian planes sanctioned by the U.S. in 2023 for involvement in arms trafficking and mercenary transport, arrived in Caracas, the Venezuelan capital, after a surreptitious route over Africa to avoid Western airspace," end quote. Allied nations are set to meet in secret in Madrid to coordinate efforts to increase support for Ukraine. That's what the Spanish newspaper El Mundo reported on Friday, October 31st. The gathering is planned for today, November 4th, and it is expected to bring together delegates from 35 countries under tight security and strict confidentiality measures. According to El Mundo, the organizers have instructed all participants to leave their mobile phones in a designated room and to refrain from posting about the meeting on social media. The event is being held under what the report described as utmost secrecy, reflecting the growing concern among Western governments about maintaining unity and backing Kiev as the war with Russia, of course, drags on and voters back home grow weary of the conflict. The agenda reportedly includes expanding military and financial assistance to Ukraine, exploring long-term security guarantees, and coordinating new measures to apply diplomatic and economic pressure on Russia. The meeting comes at a critical juncture in the conflict. Ukraine has been steadily losing territory to Russia and is currently running out of fresh troops to send to the front. The Kremlin, they have repeatedly warned that further Western military assistance will only escalate the conflict. Slate News reports that major security concerns have been raised in Norway after safety tests revealed that Chinese-made electric vehicles can be remotely accessed and controlled by their manufacturers back in China. A Norwegian public transport company conducted covert cybersecurity tests on electric buses from both European and Chinese makers. The investigation, it sought to determine whether foreign-built vehicles posed a threat to national security. Findings, they were alarming. While European-made buses showed no issue, tests revealed that a Chinese-manufactured bus by Yutong could be manipulated remotely. The vehicles, they give the manufacturer direct access to its onboard systems. The test showed that Yulong had the ability to access the bus's software, diagnostics, and battery systems. Alarmingly, the Chinese Communist Party-aligned company could even stop or even disable the vehicle entirely. An academic who assisted in the investigation warned that the implications for public safety and national security were severe. He said, quote, "The Chinese bus can be stopped, turned off, or receive updates that can destroy the technology that the bus needs to operate normally," end quote. He explained that while hackers or foreign suppliers cannot directly steer the buses, their ability to remotely shut them down poses a serious threat to Norway's infrastructure. He added that this level of remote control could be used to disrupt transportation systems or apply pressure to the Norwegian government during a crisis. The discovery, it comes amid growing global alarm over Chinese control of smart vehicles and infrastructure. National security experts and think tanks, they have repeatedly warned that Chinese-built electric vehicles could be weaponized by Beijing, either to spy on foreign nations or to disrupt their critical systems. In fact, in recent years, Chinese automakers have conducted road tests in the United States, collecting massive amounts of mapping and location data, information that experts believe could have strategic or even military value. Slate News noted that concerns have been growing that vehicles could be used for large-scale terrorist attacks via remote access. In July, the United Nations published a chilling new report about the dangerous new frontier in terrorism. The organization warns that driverless vehicles could be hijacked by terrorists and turned into slaughter bots. The UN report is titled Algorithms and Terrorism, subtitled The Malicious Use of Artificial Intelligence for Terrorist Purposes. According to the report, AI-powered cars, drones, and robotics, well, they could soon be weaponized by Islamists and other terror-type groups or to carry out mass casualty attacks from a distance. And this is not just a problem being dealt with in Norway. In August, the Israel Defense Forces banned entry of Chinese-made electric vehicles into its military bases, citing the possibility of espionage using sensors and cameras. According to Israel National News, the directive will require all career officers and civilian employees who own Chinese vehicles park them outside of military bases. The reason for this decision was the concern that confidential information could be compromised through surveillance systems built into the cars. But here's my question. How many other Chinese-made electronics are also equipped with cameras and sensors, all designed to spy on Americans? This might have been, well, far-fetched a few years ago, right? But now it's common knowledge that not just cars, but appliances like smart TVs, security systems, city light posts, alarm systems, and countless other devices, well, they have been sending data 24/7 in real time to centralized computers owned by manufacturers, many of them which are in China. Whether the manufacturers are in China or New York City, do you really want your, personal data being tracked, being stored, and then being sold to the highest bidder? It's called the Internet of Things, and it's incredibly common for these devices to be tracking and analyzing everything you do. Orwell's nightmare is here. And the question is, where is your red line? Something to think about, because one day it could cost you, and it could cost us as a nation.